Today, we're talking about something that I think everyone building AI agents eventually runs into. It's one thing for agents to reason, it's another thing for agents to act. So things like posting in Slack, creating a GitHub issue, updating a CRM, or even just sending an email. It's where things can often get painful because connecting agents to real world systems usually means building and maintaining dozens, sometimes hundreds of brittle integrations. And authentication breaks, APIs change, permissions get messy, testing is complicated. And so suddenly you're spending more time writing tools than actually building agent logic and delivering value to your users. And so that's what today's session is exactly about. We're going to show you Inkeep's agent framework, how it handles tool use and agentic workflows. We're going to show you why integrations are the backbone of serious AI deployments, and how Composio's MCP server library gives agents instant access to over 15,000 tools securely and reliably without building integrations from scratch. You're also going to see live demos where we connect agents to Slack, GitHub, and Gmail in real time. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A where the audience can jump in and ask questions. I'm joined by two incredible engineers, Omar Gonzalez, founding engineer at Inkeep, who will walk you through how our agent framework thinks about tool use and why integrations matter so much in production, specifically our Composio integration. And then we'll have Jayesh Sharma, AI engineer at Composio, who will show you how their MCP servers unlock thousands of integrations out of the box and demo it live. And then again, like I said, we'll have a Q&A at the ending, so drop your questions. So note your questions as we go. So whether you're experimenting with agents locally or deploying them into production systems, this session should give you a very practical blueprint for making them actually useful in the real world. So with that, let's get started. Omar, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm Omar. I am a founding engineer here at Inkeep, and we've been building out the Inkeep agents framework for a while now. There are many features that we have. So we have like chat UIs, chat apps, agents for support platform, and agents as workflows. Basically, the idea with the Inkeep framework is that your team can go in and start creating and managing agents, and also just collaborating across your team. So there's many team members. I'll show you guys in the demo in a bit. If there are many team members, you guys can share agents. One person can fully take control of the agent, but then other people are just using it. That's pretty cool. And then also, as I mentioned briefly, when we deploy these agents in forms of chat UIs or chat apps, let's say as a Slack bot or something like that, they become very, very powerful. Another big feature we have is that not only is it a visual builder, or we have a visual builder, but we also have a developer SDK. So developers are able to basically create what non-devs see on the screen, but fully encode and take advantage of IDEs and just LLMs to be able to spin up agents much quicker. And so one of the challenges we have when creating these agents, and Gaurav touched on this a little bit, is that there's a ton of different third-party services that people want to connect to. And sometimes we build some custom ones on our own because it's a very specific integration. But here we allow users to, or we allow whoever is deploying an Inkeep agent framework to connect to Composio. So with Composio, we are able to unlock a ton of many more MCP servers, so more integrations that the agents can connect to. These are some key points that from Composio, but basically, yeah, our agents are able to connect to a lot more services just straight out of the box. And I'm gonna run through a couple of use cases and then go straight into the demo. For example, one use case is a customer support automation. Here, the example is an agent, let's say a customer support ticket was opened, then the agent can automatically run from there. So it'll, let's say a Zendesk ticket was open, this will then trigger the agent to either summarize the ticket or assign it to a specific person, tag it with specific things, or take actions on behalf of whoever's setting it up. So this would be possible with a Zendesk Composio MCP server, Intercom Composio MCP server, and so on. And this would, in theory, lead to great results. This is one use case. Another use case can be for engineers and development teams to enhance their workflow. This is mainly related to the software development cycle. So anywhere in between, like from the moment an engineer submits a pull request, there can be code reviews or other useful things. Like we have a very popular docs writer. So an engineer submits a pull request and we have a docs writer agent that analyzes what the changes were and then submits a separate pull request to update the documentation, which is very, very useful. And there are other use cases around developer workflow. And then the third use case is a sales and marketing automation. And in this example, you can use MCPs for HubSpot, Salesforce, or other platforms, and the agents can do actions like send personalized emails or schedule meetings and so on. And this would be very, very powerful for the sales and marketing team. I know our sales and marketing team uses an agent to prepare for their upcoming meetings with customers and things like that, just to refine their pitch deck and be more efficient there. And these are just 3 use cases. There can be many, many more depending on who you're building agents for. So I'll jump straight into the demo. And this is our Inkeep cloud platform. If you visit our GitHub, you can deploy this on your own and set this up yourself. With this platform, there are many, many cool things. It's a full multi-tenant platform. So, for example, there's an organization where you can invite members and give assign roles to members and so on. Create projects within that. So here, for example, I'll be using my project, Omar's project, and I can add members to that, manage who can use or not use my agents in here. And here, my demo agent right now is a presentation agent. So this slide that I just used, I created it using an agent that I set up this morning. So for example, this is what it would look like in the Inkeep framework. I created, and this is the visual builder, by the way. And here I have a orchestrator agent that basically will delegate things to the Google Slides specialist and the calendar specialist. So then, and we'll see it in action in a bit, but basically I just, with each agent, there's a prompt and there's many more other configurations that you can add to each agent. You can, there's many more features like custom components, artifacts, you can change the model, prompts, add skills. And so I have my orchestrator agent basically just delegating. Then there's a calendar specialist connected to my Google Calendar. So here, the Google Calendar MCP, I didn't have to build out any custom MCP for that. This is coming from Composio. And hopefully Jayesh is able to show more of the Composio UI. But in Composio, I just set up a Google Calendar MCP, and I attach it to this specialist. I have a web scraper just in case there are links in the in my calendar invite, and then the specialist, which uses a template that I wanted to use. So here, the prompt really needed to be very specific. I was refining it throughout the day to make sure. So Google Slides is surprisingly very complex for an agent to go in there and edit slides and insert text here and there. So hopefully people are using more simpler integrations. But yeah, so this is what it would look like. And to try it out, basically I can tell it, can you create a slide deck for me? 2 to 3 slides, mixed audience, and just some additional instructions that I wanted to give it because on my trial runs, it was messing up a bit. But here you can see it in action. It takes a while, it will reason through, it'll check my calendar. And we can just let it run for a bit. And while that is running, I can show off a little bit on what else is nice about the Inkeep framework. So for example, I think I did mention already. So this, I would save it as a presentation agent. But other team members can then come in, and I built out the presentation agent. And in here, these tools, like Google Calendar and Google Slides, these are connected to my accounts. So when they come in, they can connect their accounts, and then the agent will run from their perspective. So that is something very nice that the Inkeep framework has. Let's see how this is going. Here, while it's running, you're able to see what tools the agent is calling. And also we have a debug pane where you can see it just running. This is very useful when you start seeing errors. Sometimes in the beginning of the agent, of developing and setting up the agent, you start getting some errors. You're able to debug some stuff there, but this has been running smoothly today. Hopefully let me see. It hasn't done any updates yet. Okay. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, we'll let it run. And as you can see in our team's agent framework, we have a ton of different projects that people are using. The sales team has a project in there, content team, some test projects, and so on. But super cool. And mainly it's just like creating the MCPs from scratch would slow us down a ton, and that's where we really like using Composio for this. Let's see what happened here. here we go. Yeah, I was having trouble creating a copy. I think, let me go here. Um, but the idea is that you refine the agent as you go. Honestly, I started this one today, and then see, like here, I think it didn't. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is where my instructions maybe are off, but the key thing is that I'm able to connect to the Google Slides and my Google Calendar. The rest is up to me and my agent framework skills. Let's see if this works. But I don't want to take up too much time just waiting for this agent to complete. And I think I covered most of the points I wanted to make. Let's just maybe give it 1 more minute. I'll probably let it run, and maybe towards the end it completes. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll hand it over to Jayesh. You can talk a little bit more about the Composio side of things.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Omar. Yeah, I feel you did a good job in introducing what Composio does. I mean, it gives AI agents a way to talk to a number of apps. I'll usually share my screen and walk you through some quick slides we have to reduce the idea, and then also show a demo of the Composio MCP server and what it can enable. So let me share my screen. Right. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So yeah, I think the idea is that, as Umar said, Composio is the infrastructure layer which connects your agent to the real world apps. So we take care of making sure the tools work, they don't break, the brittleness is gone, and we also monitor it for errors. We keep improving the system on the fly, and we see how well an agent can use a given tool. And if it fails for some reason, for example, descriptions are not right, or maybe the names are a bit ambiguous, we fix them just by looking at how the agent is reacting. So we do run a lot of evals as well on top of our tools. So that's what it is. We have 1,000+ apps now. So we have also an agent system in the background which builds these things. So we don't really build them ourselves anymore. So we have a very comprehensive agent system that does this. I had a talk recently on that. I think we'll put some content out about what that system is as well. It's really interesting stuff. So what that agent system does is it starts building. If I say, okay, I need an integration for Slack, it goes to the Slack documentation, figures things out, writes code, tests if it works or not, and then ultimately raises a PR, and our QA teams picks it up. The QA tests all of our integrations, and then they get merged. So like we merge hundreds of PRs a day through that system. And so that powers our core business. So like we have a bunch of integrations and we keep adding them on the fly. We keep improving our skills as well based on the interactions that we see people have with our tools. And then we have this MCP server called Composio MCP. Like it's been called Tool Auditor before, but we now unifying it under a Composio single name. So what happens is Composio also handles for you authentication. So for example, if you add whatever MCP server you want to add to your agent, you always need to at least do some authentication with it. For example, if you're adding linear or let's say in the previous example, we had Google Calendar, Google Sheets, for example. You also need to authenticate your user with a specified app, and then only your agent can start accessing it. So Composio centralizes all of this into its own platform. So what happens is, I'll show it to you in a while. So you auth with Composio, and then Composio manages, it figures out how to provide those credentials to the agent. So the agent doesn't see the credentials itself, but it can still enable actions on all of the different apps that you use. So we will walk over this in a demo and get a better idea of how these things work. But yeah, I think the thing I want to talk to you about is the problem with MCPs. So it's great that we have these many apps. It's great that we have so many tools to work with. But when you start using them in your agent systems, you'll realize that when you need a larger number of MCPs, for example, if I'm building a general purpose agent where an example I'll show you will also demonstrate it. So like, let's say I have a productivity agent where I need access to Slack, Linear, GitHub, all the apps which I use when I'm working daily. And this is a use case I also frequently use myself when I'm working. So let's say I make design docs on Notion, and then I want my agent to be able to, let's say, go read a design doc and then make tickets on Linear. And based on that, it spins up its own sub-agents. Like I use Cloud Code heavily while I'm coding. So the sub-agents then take on these individual tasks, and they keep updating my Linear, keep pushing to GitHub. So like they operate across different apps. So when you start adding these many MCP servers into your agent system, the context window gets bloated, right? Because you need to inject the tool schemas for each of the different tools that you have. For example, GitHub alone can have hundreds of tools. Let's say create a PR, create this and that. So n number of tools per app, and when you keep adding those MCP servers into your agent system, the context window can't take it, right? It just gets full. So that is a problem. Then every single MCP server has their own way of dealing with auth. Some servers require API keys, some servers require OAuth, some have DCR. Like there are many different ways you can authenticate with your MCP server. So all of that, it just adds to a lot of overhead when it comes to designing an agent system which can do a number of things. So even as simple as I said, like the use case I described earlier, if you want to do it yourself in Cloud Code, you need to add those servers yourself, and everything else needs to be handled manually as well. And then Composio does it in a very interesting way by what we call a Composio MCP server. So the idea is that it's just a single MCP. So instead of adding, let's say, calendar, sheets, and number of different MCP servers, you only add one Composio MCP server. And that server has these meta tools, which I'll show you in a while. So what I mean by meta tools is that, let's say you have a search tool and an execute tool. So the search tool takes in a use case as input. And then what happens is you can say, okay, I want to create a sheets. I want to create a demo for a slide for my given demo. This is the content, do it. So based on this use case, Composio search runs a vector plus Vue25 search across all of our tool catalog. It figures out, given your past history, for example, if you've used slides in the past, it knows, okay, you've connected slides. So a bunch of these things run in the background, and it gives you the right set of tools to use. So that way, your context window doesn't really have tools from n number of MCP servers, but just the most relevant ones. And then it does like execute on top of it. It does remote workbench. So it can handle large context. For example, what I mean by remote workbench is essentially Kodak, if you're familiar with it. So what happens is, let's say, if I ask it to fetch all of my emails, I think I'll just walk you over this when I'm looking at the demo. I think it's easier to understand when you see things happening as well. So I'll quickly skip over this. Let's go to the demo. That's the more interesting part. So I'll jump here. I'll have a local Inkeep running. So as Omar said, you can deploy it locally as well. So I have a local Inkeep running. This is my productivity agent. And I just need to add one Composio MCP server. So if you go to my MCP server, you'll see I have a Composio MCP, that's all. So I don't really have many other things involved here. And now what I will do is I'll ask it something like, okay, let's say, can you look at all of my emails from the last month or two? Actually, yeah, last 2 months. And figure out all the GitHub repos I'm involved in. Like look at all the emails I've received around PRs. And then create a Google Sheet with the PR number, the status of the PR, any additional data you want to add. Right, so like I'll give it a very general use case, right? Now this agent has access to a bunch of different MCP servers. And so like these are the meta tools I was talking about earlier. So you have manage connections, you have multi-execute. So there's this docs page that I like to send people to. Like this is called How Composio Works. We'll put a link in the chat later on. But the idea is that these are the meta tools that you have. So if I go back to my section, you'll see the first thing it does is does Composio search tools. So it figures out, okay, the use cases fed Gmails and known fields does this. Like these are the bunch of use cases identified on what it needs output in. So after search tools happen, it figures out, okay, it needs access to Gmail, GitHub, and Google Sheets. So it doesn't really have those connections with me right now. So I haven't really done anything at all. Like I haven't really authed with any of the toolkits so far. So it just gives me links right away. So I click on connect Gmail. It takes me to this page. I say, okay, I'll connect my Gmail for sure. I can add whatever scopes I want to add to it. So I can say, okay, use this email. There's a bunch of other emails, by the way. But yeah, that does it. I'll give it, okay, these are the scopes that Composio wants. I say, okay. In hindsight, I should have at least done authentication for a bunch of them. But yeah, never mind. We'll take 2 minutes more. So I go to GitHub again and do the same thing. I say, okay, I can connect GitHub to it. So the idea is that it makes it super easy for you just to authorize an agent on the fly. I don't really have to go auth every single MCP one by one. Whatever is required, the link appears on demand, and you click a link and just say allow. Yeah, go on. So Composio will manage now this all by itself. So if you go to the platform, I'll show you the platform in a while. But like I already connected all of the apps so far, so I think it's good. I'll close the rest of the tabs to keep things simple. Yeah, done. Perfect. So once it's done all of that, I can just say, okay, I have done it. But it asks me some questions. Should I include PRs only you authored or PRs, any PRs? And I have connected the apps. Don't exclude anything. Yeah, extra careful. But anything. So now what happens is it figured out what tools to use. It managed the connections for all of them. And once I have given it all the connections, it can now start actually executing these tools. So the other meta tool is Composio multi-execute. And what Composio multi-execute does is it runs whatever tools were outputted from the search tools. In many cases, what happens is, let's say, when I'm handling such large context data, for example, I'm handling all of my emails from the past couple of months. You can imagine the output will be huge. I can't really put all of that output into the context of my chat because my context window will explode, right? So what happens is Composio offers this thing called remote workbench. So it's like a remote sandbox which gets spun up for each one of the users. It's an isolated environment altogether. So what happens is large outputs of tools get synced to that workbench automatically. And what then happens is this agent can communicate with the workbench by doing some grep commands or list commands. Essentially, all of that bash command is what the agent will work with on the remote workbench. So large context data gets stored in the workbench. It's operated in the workbench as well. So agent can write code to, for example, deduct or like transform that data. Let's say if you have a huge JSON that was output of a single multi-execute tool, it'll be in the workbench, and let's say the agent can run JQ commands to figure out the right fields to pick up. And so the context is selectively populated based on what it needs instead of having the entire thing in the context window. So as you can see, the remote workbench is now active because since I asked my emails from the past 2 months, the output could have been huge. And so the remote workbench is called. You can see what code it is writing here to execute it. So it is importing JSON. Let me also zoom in a bit, maybe. Yeah, so like it's easier to see. I'll remove this annoying marker here. But yeah, so you can do import JSON. This is the code that the agent is trying to write in the remote workbench. So it's trying to import, let's say, the path where this is the path where the output of the previous multi-execute was stored. So this was all of my emails in the past 2 months. And then it tries to extract stuff from it based on some file code path. And like it identifies common patterns. It writes a whole bunch of code here to be able to extract these things. So none of this is in my current context window right now. So my context window is clean and lean, doesn't really populate. So a bunch of remote workbench tools are running, they're multi-execute remote workbench. A lot of things are going back and forth. So it's trying to figure things out. So it pulled all of my PR-related GitHub notifications from the last 2 months. Extracted the repos and the PR numbers. It did all of that shit and gave me a single sheet here. So I can click on this sheet now. Hopefully it's done a good job. But let's see how it looks. One second. Why can I not click this? Yeah, okay. So yeah, it gave me all of these PRs that I think I authored. Probably, like, I think there's much more, but yeah, I probably didn't really do a good job yet. Unique PRs found from email. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I think it's only pagined the first 500 matching emails, so it can do more if I ask it. But that's the idea. It can like do large context tasks. It can populate sheets. And none of these apps I add myself. So it just knows what to do. I can ask it for, let's say, n number of other use cases. I can also use browser tool, for example. It's one of the most heavily used tools in Composio MCP. So you can just say, okay, go to some random page and do something. It can spin up a browser session for you, which maintains your cookies as well. So let's say once you sign into a given account in the browser, like Composio will remember all of that for you. So let's say in the future, you can just say, okay, go do this in a specific website, it'll accomplish that task as well. So yeah, like that is the idea. That's what I wanted to show you. Like this is what solves context window for us. The remote workbench is a super powerful tool to like execute like large context data. But I mean, yeah, I think that's all I had, to be honest. And the one last thing I could show you is how the platform looks. So you can come into the platform and experiment with your own playground. So you don't have to build an agent already. What you can do is once you sign up with the platform, you'll have a playground button on the top where you can experience this MCP server directly. So you typically playground is the same thing over and over again. So like you just say, okay, I want whatever use case here, and then it'll try to do the same thing. Search tools. You can see logs here. You can see the toolkit data. Everything else happens here as well. So you can see what the input is, what the output is as well. So the output looks something like this. It tells you what tools to execute and when. It also gives you a plan on like what works the best, how to execute tool in what order, stuff like that. So yeah, something similar to this. And everything is managed in Composio. So if you go to your auth configs, let's say this is my project, I can go in and see all of my auth configs. So everything is managed automatically. So my Gmail, YouTube, everything just handles these things by itself. Composio manages the refresh of tokens, everything else also. So none of this is something that you need to worry about. But yeah, I think that's all I had. Happy to take any questions now.
Super fascinating. I'm just like blown away by both demos. I think Omar presenting slides that an agent had created for him just beforehand, and then Jayesh just showing off like meta tools and especially the remote workbench. I didn't know about that, so like really cool stuff. Thank you for both of your presentations. Without further ado, we'll open it up for questions and answers. I think throughout the presentation, a couple of the participants had questions on their mind, so I'll just open it up for them to ask questions to the presenters. If not, I can just read the questions directly. So I think Rukmanganath had a question for Omar. He asked, how does Inkeep compare to, say, N8N or LangChain or Crew, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. I haven't used N8N that much or Crew. I've seen some demos of people doing that. I think last time I checked for Crew, it's mainly like more developer focused. If you wanted a UI for that, you have to build that out on your own. And I think it was Python based, if I recall. I didn't demo the TypeScript side of things, but I briefly just touched up on it. That one of the advantages of Inkeep is that there's also just a developer focused version as well with TypeScript SDK, and you can push and pull changes to the environment. So that's pretty cool. And then just I would say that we're pretty much on par with what N8N is doing, and I think they do have an enterprise version, but out of the box, with Inkeep, you can set up a multi-tenant framework, and we use things like Better Off for authentication that you can configure. And yeah, I think they're very similar, but these slight differences might be better either for someone as a developer who just wants something easy and free to use, or if an enterprise is coming in, they'll look more at the off side of things like permissioning and team collaboration and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just add in that we do have comparison pages on our doc site. So I dropped a link to our N8N comparison page in the chat. So if you want to learn more, just feel free to check that out. Okay, anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask our presenters? Okay, so Alexander had asked also to Omar, can you share the top 3 most popular use cases for your platform among customers? And I am particularly interested in the integrations of or agent scenarios that deliver the biggest impact in practice.
Yeah. Let's see. I would say the most impactful right now, and I touched upon this in my use cases, but For developers, the Docs writer is pretty popular and impactful right now. You're basically able to update your documentation either from GitHub PRs that have been submitted or from Slack. You can trigger. You saw something wrong with documentation. You can just call the agent like, hey, update this documentation here, and a PR is spun up. You don't have to go then talk to engineering to submit a code change and things like that. That's one popular use case. Another one definitely around customer support. So for Zendesk tickets and Zendesk and Intercom tickets. So we help people deploy these agents as chat UIs on their website. And then the agent is able to, different customers have different rules, but depending on what they want, it can either escalate to a human or open a Zendesk ticket or just give a generic answer. So the customer support use case is very, very popular as well, and it works well. I think those would be the most popular right now, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. And I guess Jayesh, shifting to you, we saw like the Meta tool with access to thousands of tools. Which tools have you seen like gaining the most popularity? And one follow-on question to that is, do you still see a use case for like individual like tools, like one MCP server per tool, or do you think that like things are really shifting to like a one MCP world with like a Meta tool on top of everything?
I think to answer the first question, I feel GitHub, Twitter, and most of the Gmail and like Google suite of tools is what we see the most usage come from. I think Gmail is our top toolkit, followed by I think Calendar and maybe some other ones. Like mostly just G suite of apps. But yeah, the other question is interesting. I feel, yeah, I think the world is definitely moving towards. Like to be honest, it's a very interesting question to answer because it depends on person to person, if you ask me. So let's say if you only are building an agent where you would need maximum of 3 tools or maximum of 2 apps, for example. Let's say I know that for my given workflow, I only need Calendar and Sheets. Right? So then it doesn't make sense for you to have a meta tool layer because then you're essentially doing a multi-hop. So you're doing a first search tools and then you're doing, let's say, multi-execute, where you can just do a native call to a given MCP. So in a world where you know exactly what MCP servers you would need, and you can set them up once, I think then having single MCP servers makes the most sense because you get the benefit of having native tools injected into the context of the agent. But where you feel like you want to have more open-ended solutions, and when you want to get started fast, for example, in our company we use it. Like everybody uses it because it's like super fast to get connected with. So I might not know that like on a random day I might need to look at some Metabase dashboard. If somebody says, okay, I have put some dashboard on Metabase, I don't want to like then go and install the Metabase MCP. I can just ask my Composio MCP, okay, yeah, this is my Metabase link, go figure it out. So like in general use cases where people are dealing with productivity use cases and there are a bunch of apps that you might keep using. So I see myself as a customer using this more than having individual MCPs because I don't want to like go to the lengths of adding MCPs and I don't even know what I need tomorrow. Some new tool might come up, and we keep adding these tools every day. Like every day we have some bunch of new tools coming up. So we keep experimenting with some new tools as well. But yeah, like it depends on the use case. To be honest, like both have a space in the world.
That makes sense. And with like tools being added every day, it makes more sense to have a meta tool. But like you said, like if you know what tools you want, then maybe you can just go with like one tool per app.
Correct.
Yeah, and one question I also have, Jayesh, is for your team at Composio, which models have you noticed like perform the best at calling tools? Like, are they reasoning models, or are they, the more simple models? Just curious what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think again, I feel Claude is nicer. Claude, I think, is one of the best tool calling models that we've used. GPT is also nice. GPT is very rule following, but sometimes it's just maybe a bit too cautious at times. It asks you for approvals more than Claude does, which is not very ideal in many of my cases. I just want like give a use case and I want it to be done. But sometimes GPT is extra bit more careful. And I think Claude is honestly the best. I haven't really used Gemini in a long time, so I can't really comment on that. Like I think I used Gemini maybe last quarter, like 4 months back, or even before that. But like it was good, but I think it never really crossed the mark for us internally. So like I think Claude comes first, then comes GPT. I also have used other open source models. I think Kimi K2 2.5 is really good at function calling. I really enjoy it on my local systems sometimes. But yeah, I just default to Claude. I don't really look at elsewhere.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'll definitely have to try Kimi out. I've heard so much about it.
Yeah, it's good with design stuff. It's good with like building websites, and it gets an understanding of the visual stuff very well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're wrapping up on the Q&A.
Can I jump in with a question?
Yeah, anyone's free to jump in, for sure. Go for it.
Cool. I guess whoever questions for anybody. Like the kind of it could be subjective too, but like where skills play into tool calling and sub agents. So it's like, should a skill like kind of be embedded with, hey, your skill is that you know how or when to call these certain tools, and then it's like, well, and these sub agents maybe are gonna call these tools, and because maybe we don't want this sub agent to call these 4 different tools that are kind of all different, like Gmail and then web search. It's like, like kind of where do you see that fit into it, and like what type of infrastructure like you guys working on, plus maybe like what users or builders like us should be setting up like this environment for the agents to optimize their performance? Like what, it's kind of a hard question to ask, but
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I get you. I think I like to read it. So there are two ways around it. Like when you mention sub agents, if you're talking about the Cloud Agent SDK, let's say building sub agents yourself. So you have one main agent, and then you build sub agents using the Cloud Agent SDK. Then what you can do ideally is that, let's say the Composio MCP that I showed you, you get that URL from the platform. You can restrict what toolkits are allowed in a given session. For example, my main agent can have the unrestricted Composio MCP server. And some of my sub agents will only have, let's say one sub agent can only have Gmail and calendar. The other one might have some set of tools. So you can, per Composio MCP session, limit what tools are allowed in this given session. So like certain sub agents can only be scoped to certain tools. That is one way of doing it. The other thing that you mentioned about skills, I think skills is also a very good way to do it. Like you can use skills to say, skill for sub agent A is about, okay, you are specifically a travel agent. You can only use, let's say, calendar and some booking apps, for example. But it's also not enforceable. So, for example, if somebody comes and tells your sub agent, okay, hey, ignore that skill, just go and use, for example, GitHub. So there's nothing stopping that agent from actually going and using GitHub. So the only reliable way to limit it is to limit the toolkits in the Composio MCP session, so that even if it wants to use, let's say, GitHub, it won't really be able to access that tool.
Yeah. So, and then like I was just, for example, like in your Rube, in the Rube app, like there's for Gmail, for example, there's like 7 pages of tools, like modify email labels as a description, like how do you think about the difference between like that, a given tool, like it says there's 40 different tools, like are those really 40 different skills, almost like the tool is the skill, you know what I mean? How do you think about that with
There's a nuance. I feel the skill, like in my understanding at least, is how you. It's a combination of how you use tools plus your own personalization layer. For example, let me take an example. I would say a skill could be. Let me think about it. So like different people can come with different interpretations of skill. Like an anthropic version of skills is that you have a skill or MD file which guides you on a very specific idea. For example, if I take the Omar's use case, I would have a skill which tells Claude Code how I build presentations. So the way you looked at my presentation, I have like an orange theme. I have certain vectors here and there, and how I go about it. Like how big are my slides usually? How much content do I put there? So all of that context I could put into a skill, and then I can have some additional tools which help the model converts some things. For example, there's a tool to download image from Unsplash, for example, to put on as a cover page. So there's some helper tools I add there. So Anthropic's version of skill is that you have some personalization guidance, you have some helper tools that the model can use, and that's a skill. What we think of as a skill in Composio is that, okay, the tools itself are not skills. Tools are just tools. They are like a means to achieve something. It's like a helper function, if you think about it. A skill is around how to, for example, when you go on Rube and you search for a use case, you see there will be like an execution guidance section which comes out in the output. So if you go look at the output of Composio search tools, you'll find that there's always a plan which comes out. And the plan is what we also think of loosely as a skill. So for example, if I say, okay, fetch emails from the last 2 months, the plan will say, okay, first step is call Gmail fetch emails with these parameters. Second step is, okay, you might need pagination, do some pagination. So it knows this guidance from past usage that we've had, and it constructs a plan for the agent to follow. So that in a way is a skill. So skill instructs the agent how to use tools in the best way possible, how to avoid some common pitfalls that we see usually happen in execution. And that can be coupled with your personal data about how, for example, David prefers his Gmails to be read, for example. So the combination of execution guidance plus some personalization on top is what we consider as a skill, not the base tool itself. If that makes sense.
Totally. Makes sense.
Perfect. A good question though. Like I like thinking about these things.
I mean, it's just so.
Yeah. Like there's so many terms, man. There's so many terms.
Not like it's confusing, but it's more like there's just so many different ways you can do it. You know.
Yeah.
Every use case is different. You know.
Mm-hmm. No, fair. I get that.
Cool.
Can I actually, maybe I'll ask a follow up. Actually, the like in general for like my situation, maybe others can relate. Like as a SaaS builder, like I mentioned in the beginning of the call prior to the recording, like just like the amount of stuff out there, you know, like if you're thinking about building your stack and wanting to, you know, bring into, you know, a given SaaS platform, agents and, you know, a chat experience, like I'm just curious to your guys' take on like that, like what do you think is like the most rock solid stack that's out there right now, like the different tooling infrastructure? Obviously you're gonna plug Composio and Inkeep, right? But any other kind of layers or pieces in between that you are just seeing a lot of value or, you know, from in general?
That's a great question, by the way, because there's so much more to an agent stack, I think, than just the tools and the agent like framework itself.
Sure, streaming and it's just crazy.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah,
I think. Go on, sorry.
Sorry. My quick take on it is that it depends on the use case. So there's a lot of different stacks that kind of all do the same thing. But I think, well, I like to think of it more on the, like, I don't know, product side of things. So let's say if you want it to be an agent that's more user facing, then you have to think a little bit more about that, what that experience would look like. If you want it to be an agent for yourself, more on the internal side of things, maybe you can leverage something just faster, more terminal based. You know what I mean?
Let's say on like more where you're building something and it's an agent that like your users can take advantage of.
Right, exactly. So then there, in that case, you would need something that has the good, or as part of your stack, you want something where you have good like monitoring and like a good UI experience for them to, I don't know, if you need just simple stuff from them, input an input box, or you need to connect to their other services, I think that's the part where you need to look at some frameworks have some limitations there. So I think I'll focus on that product feature and then go from there. But that's my approach.
Yeah. I would have two tips. One is look for UI stuff. Copilot Kit is great. They have their own React library. You can plug into any LLM provider, agent framework, right? Like Crew, Mastra, Inkeep, etc. The thing with Inkeep though is we do have our own React library. So like that I think that's kind of the space we're taking is we have like this all-in-one kind of platform, but
Sorry to interrupt. Is it headless?
Headless in the sense that like you could style it.
Yeah, like full styling.
For sure, you could pass in like a configuration like style object.
Oh, sick.
My second tip is Vercel just released the chat SDK like this week actually. So you could basically plug your agent into like Slack, Teams, etc., like all these places. And so you could use Inkeep and Composio with that. So like that's another layer of the agent stack. But I'm sure there are like many more tools. Those are just two that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I think we're kind of running up against the hour here, and we're gonna wrap up the Q&A. Just wanted to say thank you for everyone who joined today's webinar session. Thank you again to Omar and Jayesh for your thoughtful presentations. Recording of this webinar will be released online and sent out to everyone on this call. So look forward to that. But if you have any more questions or just any curiosities, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to answer any of your questions. And yeah, just let us know. Just again, thank you for everybody, your thoughtful questions. And yeah, we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.